Hi, everyone, and welcome to another great episode of Royal Black and Elite. We are in the middle of Black History Month, and I'm so excited. I just did a lecture for a sorority in Maryland for the Royal Black and Elite Tour, so I'm excited about today's show. I'm Lady Trinette Wilson. I'm Associate Historian and Lecturer. And today I have a great show for you. Come on in, everybody. Thanks for sharing, and subscribing. Today, y'all, listen. During the Gilded Age, I've been on this Gilded Age kick for some reason. I think it's the show. So I am definitely going to do a review as soon as we get through Black History Month. But today's show is in particular is about someone who lived during that time and served a man named J.P. Morgan. Now, J.P. Morgan was a very wealthy man. He was a railroad guy, magnate, and he was at the time reportedly worth about $60 billion. And what do you do when you have $60 billion? I guess probably whatever you wanted to do. But in those years, they used to keep libraries, very extensive libraries. And J.P. Morgan was no different. And in those libraries, they had arts, they had books, encyclopedias, manuscripts, and secrets. And one of J.P. Morgan's secrets was one of the biggest secrets in the world at that time, that in fact the woman who served as the director for his library was passing as white, but she was really black. Join me today for the story of Bella de Costa Greene. She's also known as Belle Marion Greene. Now, this secret was discovered when an autobiographer named Jean Strauss was writing an autobiography on J.P. Morgan. And it was discovered that the woman who had been his librarian for 40 plus years had marked C for colored on her birth certificate, which opened the whole can of worms. So let's get into her life, because passing for white during that time was something very light skinned people did. Now, why did they do that? Even though there was a contingent of wealthy blacks during the Gilded Age time, their wealth they really paled in comparison to a person like J.P. Morgan, and the lifestyle paled in comparison to living as a black wealthy versus a wealthy white woman. And so her mother thought it was best. Her parents were really interesting. So let's start there, because her parents were straight black. I mean, they were black. Her father, his name was Richard T. Greener. He was actually, he became the dean of the Harvard Law School. He was the first black graduate to ever graduate from Harvard College. So, very distinguished dad. And then his mom, her name was Genevieve Ida Fleet Greener. And she was a musician, housewife kind of thing. So she wasn't as well noted as her father, but they were clearly both black. And she grew up in an all African American community. Now, evidently, her mother and father had some problems because they broke up when she was a teenager. And it is said that she never saw her father again after that. So, can you imagine knowing that your father's the dean of Harvard, but you have nothing to do with them? Mm. But so sad about that story and how that family broke up. But nevertheless, her mother thought, well, I've got to do something that is maybe not popular amongst the black community, even though I've lived among them all these years, and we fit to make our family white. So that's exactly what she did. And she went through some painstaking uh, things to actually get it done. Because what she did is she changed her children's name. She changed her name to kind of line up more with Dutch, because she was more fair skinned. And then Bella, she was more dark skinned. So she named her Bella de Costa Greene. So that's where that name came from the Portuguese and the Spaniard side, to account for her dark skin. But looking at this woman as a black woman, and seeing many, many different mixed race people throughout the years, this woman clearly looks black. So, anyway, they're walking around there telling everybody they're white, and doors are opening for them as a result. And we can kind of ride her for not saying that she was black, But the truth is, Bella oversaw the J.P. Morgan Library for over 40 years, and despite her living as a white woman, allegedly, her blackness was undeniable. And her accomplishments as a librarian, no matter black or white, was interesting, and it exceeded every librarian in the world. Now, she was born on November 26, 1879, and in the mid 1890s, Bell started work at the administrative offices of Columbia University Teacher College. Now, she was very stylish and was known for her beauty, her style, and just overall grace. So, this presented an opportunity for her. This lady, her name was Grace Headley Dodge, financed her to go to the Northfield Seminary for young ladies. And she went there from 1896 to 1899. This really prepared her for her librarian career to come. In 1902, she started working for Princeton, and that's where she met Junius Spencer Morgan, who was a relative of J.P. Morgan's. And that's where she got our big break because of her really being known for the knowledge of rare books. That is why she was selected. So they said, and so in 1905 she began to work for J.P. Morgan. I mean, what a life she had with this man. She basically traveled all over the world, buying books, manuscripts, and artwork for him. And she had the ability to make thousands of dollars worth of deals for him. And, people were saying that, of course, that maybe they had a relationship. Now we know it was not uncommon at all in that day for white men to marry black women, have babies with black women, and have mistresses as black women. So they did ask her, did they have an affair? Because when see what he did after he died, he left her $50,000, which was worth $1.5 million today. He also had her on a salary of $10,000 a month. A year, which is about $500,000 in today's terms. And she had to stay the boss of his library even after he was gone. So they say they didn't have a relationship, but all the tea leaves say they were very good friends, even if they didn't. She said she wasn't worried about no JP Morgan. She was getting paid, doing her job, and the whole time she was dating this guy here that you see on the camera. And his name was Bernard. He was a Renaissance art historian. And so she said that's who she was in a relationship with. We don't know who really public she was in a relation. Who she was really in a relationship with because she never got married and she never had any children. She really just dedicated her life to building this library for J.P. Morgan. And so her personal records, she burned them up when she passed away. That's why we don't have a lot of personal information about their relationship. But in 1924, when the J.P. Morgan Library became a public institution, she actually did an exhibit that drew 170,000 people. Morgan passed in 1913, but Bella continued to be the director of his libraries until 1948. So after 1948, she was wheelchair bound by then, but by 1948, she was starting to get the accolades for the beautiful work she did with the library, and she passed in 1949 of cancer. She's buried in New York. She was cremated, but she does have a grave site there in New York at the Conisco Cemetery in Valhalla. So here's this very interesting story of a librarian. Isn't always the innocent looking women who live these really extraordinary life that she looked like she may have been boring and did boring things, but in fact, she traveled the world and worked for the most powerful man in the world. In fact, he bailed out the government more than once with his wealth. Bella was asked one time by a reporter, did they have an affair? And she responded, quote, we tried it, unquote. She never expounded, and we don't know how far the affair went. But Morgan did leave her $1.5 million. She burned her papers, and he took care of her for the rest of her life. So I think he may have had some feelings for her, allegedly. So that's been another great episode of Royal Black and Elite. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you all for supporting me during Black History Month. I'll see you on another great episode, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Leave me a comment. I love reading your feedback. I really appreciate you.